Welcome to the Unfinished podcast. Truth be told, we've never really learned how to deal with our unfinished business. In a society that's taught us to be put together, what do we do when our world falls apart? Most importantly, why does our world fall apart? See, right now we're living through the most significant transformation humanity has ever known. Knowing how to pick up our pens and write a renewed story has never been a more important conversation. So welcome to the podcast that interviews heroes that at some point had to start again and rise to glory.
Cole Gibson.
One of Australia's top 100 most influential women.
Love is always there.
The more love you give, the more you get it back.
We're all connected.
And that's unification. What's up, everybody who is live with us? I just want to let you guys know, if you didn't tune in for the last episode, I'll be monitoring the questions and the comments, and at the end we're going to have a 15-20 minute Q&A with this amazing soul, Jill Nixon. Welcome to the Unfinished podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved when you reached out. I don't really do bios or anything or formal introductions. We're just going to jump into it if that's cool.
Absolutely.
So for your guys' context, I always try to get a feel for where people are at before we jump into a deep and intimate conversation. And Jill was just sharing with me, some of the things that she's been experiencing the past couple of months. And I'm sure there's a major backstory, which I would love to get to, but I think that's a really powerful place to begin. What you were just sharing with me about this moment, making a decision to choose faith and to choose trust and to really, jump into the unknown when the stakes seemed pretty high. It's a pretty intense thing to have been told. I'd love you to just begin by taking us into that moment and what you had to cultivate within you to make the decision that you made, especially during this time.
Absolutely. You're referring to the eye situation, correct?
Yeah,
that one.
I think that's amazing.
Okay. So I've been studying energy healing and the power of quantum energy manifestation, and how meditation as well we can heal our bodies through that by shifting the energy field around our bodies. I have seen so many miracles, although my logical mind always doubts it. So I had made a decision that I was leaving Canada. I was supposed to go to Costa Rica 2 weeks after this decision, and via 3 synchronicities, which was from a meditation the month before, I had an opportunity. It was a half-hour period. 3 people reached out, and it all came together to attend this Dr. Joe workshop it was sold out. The waitlist was 4,000 people, but I had an opportunity to get in, have a room to stay, and have a place to stay with a friend for a month. So I was like, yes. By the third time, I just surrendered, changed my flight from Costa Rica, sorted everything out. The first two I resisted, but the third one I was like, this is literally God speaking to me. So right before I was about to leave, it was about I had 3 days to pack up whatever I needed, get my dog sorted, and get to Florida. And this is the middle of the pandemic. I have not gotten the vaccine for my own health reasons of what I believe in. So it was a very difficult decision because I had thought certain things might happen and maybe I won't be able to get back to Canada. Anyway, so about 2 days prior, I was wearing contacts that were colored contacts from Asia. And I wear contacts every day, but these ones were not the best quality and they cut my eye. And it started really hurting. And then it just kind of got really red and I thought, oh, it'll be fine. The next day I was giving Reiki to a client and my eyes were closed and all of a sudden it started burning. So immediately after the session, I took them out. And the next day I was supposed to leave. I took a nap for about an hour and I woke up and my eye was so red. There was the white spot had gone from very, very tiny to it was big. It was about maybe a fifth of my eye.
Also,
and and it was a corneal ulcer, super infected. And I started like freaking out. I wanted to gouge my eye out. Fast forward, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna sleep this off. So I tried to like go to sleep again.
No.
Did not work. Packed my bags. I'm like, I'm going. Anyways, finally I got like a couple more hours of sleep after everything was good to go. I had to get up at like 4 a.m. to leave. And I woke up at midnight. Actually, it was 11:58, and I've never been in so much pain in my entire life. So I just tuned in my heart. I'm like, what do I do? And I got an answer, text Andrew. So Andrew was my optometrist. I hadn't talked to him in 2 years. We were really good friends. I stopped seeing him because we became really, really good friends. So I was seeing someone else who works at his clinic. Texted him. He answered, and I said, this is what's going on. I sent him a picture, and he was like, I can't believe I just saw this. I usually turn my phone off, and I just for some reason left it on and saw the flash right before I turned over. Like, it was the weirdest thing. And he was like, if you messaged 2 minutes later, I wouldn't have seen it. So he said, I think I know what it is. I'm gonna open the clinic early for you tomorrow. I'm sending you antibiotics to the hospital. Please go pick them up right away. Like, this is very serious. So I did. He opened the clinic early. And I literally just had like 20 minutes before I had to leave for my flight. And that was cutting it close. So I go to the clinic. He basically tells me, do not leave Canada. This is so infected. You need to get seen every single day. Like, this could be massive medical bills in the States. You could literally go blind. And I just logically, I was like, okay, I can't leave. But in my body, I knew I needed to leave, and I needed to go on this trip. So I just tuned in again, and I said, Jill, what do you believe in? I've literally seen people heal from cancer, Lyme's disease, Crohn's disease. I've seen people who were literally blind. You might not believe this, but literally blind, be able to see. And although I've had a lot of shifts with energy healing, and I've seen other people get shifts, I've never healed anything like super physical. It's more been emotional for me. But I think it was a test, and it was just showing me what is possible. So I made the decision. I said, no, I'm going. I had 5 minutes to make that decision. I almost missed my flight. I booked it across the airport, almost fell because I had my dog in one hand, and they were calling my name. They're like, Jill, the gate's closing in 15 seconds. And I'm like, no, I need to get this test. Oh yeah, I took my dog. Oh, he was coming with me.
I love how like Americans always do that.
Yeah. So yeah, anyways, we got there just in time. And he's like, hey, he texted me. He's like, please see an optometrist there every single day. So I'm like, okay. So I saw an optometrist right before the meditation retreat started. And he's like, yeah, this is super infected. I can't we're going to have to give you cortisol, but I can't give it to you yet because like it's so swollen. So just like take, I had antibiotics. He said, take the drops and like come back in a couple of days. So I did exactly that. I didn't even take them as much as they told me to. Within 2 days, and this was intense meditation. This wasn't a couple of hours a day. This was a Dr. Joe advanced follow-up. So that means like you're out of bed at 3:15 in the morning. You're meditating, starting at 4. You do a 4-hour one. You have a break. You do like another. He'll talk for a bit. You have to do another few hours, like, and you go till 12 p.m. After 2 days, I went back, and he literally could not believe it. The optometrist. He was like, I don't know what you've been doing, but it's all healed. Like the white spot, it just needs to catch up. Like you're in the clear. We don't even need to give you cortisol. And he was like, what did you do? And I was like, oh, just some light meditation and like quantum healing. And he like thought it was crazy, but it's all good. And then he told me, my eyes are super dark brown. I don't know if you could see them, but he said like this was a huge white thing. So the swelling had gone down, but like there was a very prominent white ulcer still. It had healed, but it was still there. And he's like, you're going to have a scar for the rest of your life. Like there's nothing we can really do about it. Like, you're just going to have to live with this huge white scar on your dark brown eyes. And I was like, okay, I just healed my eye and I could have gone blind and my body's just catching up. Like, am I going to take what he just said, or am I going to believe in the power of source and quantum healing? And like, so I rewrote it. I said, I might have a scar on my eye for the rest of my life. And literally in like 4 days. No, I said it in my head. I said, thank you very much to him. And then in my head, I said that. And in 4, yes, I didn't want to get in a fight. He already thought it was crazy by this point, but he saw it in front of his eyes. And so, yeah, in 4 days, literally the scar, like it got super, super small and it's gone now. And so I just, yeah, I've put so much trust in source and God and the quantum. So many miracles in the past 2 months and so many challenges, because I feel like from my core, it's just me building my belief in this power so that I can tell my stories and I can help people with my stories and with like Reiki and energy healing and all these other techniques and like healing powers that have been hidden from us. And the more I go through, the more I just put my trust in source. And I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not. I mean, that was a really difficult decision to make, but yeah, my mind just keeps getting blown by the power of this work.
I think this is a really important thing that you're sort of emphasizing, that when people hear like these testimonies, right, these stories are just like, you know, wow, it sounds so easy. And what I'd love to dive into, and this is a really timely conversation for me as well, because this is something I've been reflecting on, you know, deeply, is what is the condition of spirit? What is the condition of the mind? What is the condition of the heart required to actually create, you know, the landscape for these miracles to occur? And, you know, something that I've really come to is truly not, which in our conversation before we jumped on, you alluded to, really not taking that glory, not taking the credit, really understanding that it is something that works through you, that is creating that healing. And so I'd love, you know, I know for sure that we don't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to give my life to God. You know, I'm going to give my life to source. And even when we do make that decision, usually there's so many trials and tribulations and failures and mistakes. And like, I think that this is such a relevant conversation for people right now, because so many of us, either consciously or unconsciously, are being called to that exact place. And
100%.
I think it's important that we have these conversations. Like, what does it really take? And where did that journey begin for you?
Yeah. Okay. So if I were to boil it down to a few words and what it takes, I think it takes a lot of trust, a lot of surrender. And no, that did not happen overnight. I'll tell you my Coles Notes journey in a moment. And also self-love and self-worthiness, like the being worthy of receiving this healing that is available to everybody, this guidance that is available to everybody. Because if we don't, like, I'd seen so many people heal from way worse things, but it was the moment that they felt worthy of actually receiving the healing, they surrendered into the trust, and they were unattached to the outcome. Like they released it, that if they didn't get healed, it didn't matter anymore, because they felt whole. And I'd love to tell another story after this of how I manifested my dog back. And I also manifested getting him stolen. And that was literally like one of the biggest miracles ever.
Wow.
And probably the hardest test. But yeah, basically, when I was younger, I was into Reiki and energy healing as a child. And I would see, like, I just always felt energy, like way more than anybody else. I couldn't go to parties in high school because I would walk in and just feel this angst. And so I always knew it was there.
Angst specifically? Was it specifically angst?
A lot of anxiety and like just like lower frequencies. And I was like, I can't deal with this. I would just start crying, like nothing would happen. I just like feel the energy. Or nightclubs, like it took a toll. But I was going through apologies, one moment. Yeah, it's not mine, it's done. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. I was going through a really difficult time, and my life was shifting a lot. It was a couple years ago, and I wanted to make like money. Had been out of work for 2 months because my arm was broken. I was serving. And at that point I was also doubling on Sabrina, which I lost as well because my arm was in a cast. So I got a new job and it was awful. And I actually got 2 in one day, gave my best friend one, and that was like really good. And then the one I took was like so bad. I was making $5 a shift. And I'm like, this is the first time I think I was like, God, like what, like, please help me. And at this point, I didn't really believe in God. I always knew there was a greater source. Like I would see spirits like as a very young child, and then I blocked all of that off.
You're just like, I'm sick of this shit. So
no, it was okay. So I was raised by a Filipino, and in the Philippines, it's like common, right? So tell like my mom and other people, I'm like, oh, I saw Auntie Kathy who passed away, or like I saw these spirits, and like, and then people would start. It was cute as like a young child, but then people would get angry at me as I think I was 6, and they were like, "Don't say that. That's not true." And so I just shut it off because I was like, "Whoa, this is dangerous." Until I went to my first Dr. Joe retreat, and then I saw a lot. But so I was at this job, and I served these people twice, and then I had the woman's number because they were supposed to come back to the final day. And there was a Dr. Joe, if you don't know him, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He has an amazing story as well of how he healed his spine and he was paralyzed. Anyways, long story short, they gifted me this workshop. And at first I said no, because I knew the cost of it. I barely knew these people. And it was weird because I got an email from an unknown sender and it said a gift, and I deleted it. And then my intuition was like, maybe I should just open that email. I thought it was spam, and it was them gifting me this course. And then I messaged her anonymously, and I'm like, who else could it be? And I messaged her, I said, it's from you. And she said, yes, we fell in love with you. And I said, I can't, this is too much. Like, I can't accept it. And she's like, no, please. Like it would mean a lot to us if you took it. And so anyways, this woman ended up sending me $2,500, e-transferring me, because it sells out in like 4 minutes. I barely knew her. It was crazy. So I signed up, was doing all the prep work, and you have to meditate for an hour a day. And there's like 40 hours of stuff you need to listen to and yada. So I start doing this, and all of a sudden I'm crying for an hour throughout every meditation.
All of a sudden.
Like all of a sudden.
Suddenly.
I never meditated in my life. People were like, you should really meditate, because I was so high strung. And like, so I guess the first meditation was half an hour, and then from there it was like 45 minutes, an hour. So like literally within 3 days, I was meditating every day, and I was just crying. And I'm like, how does anyone, and then I couldn't think properly after, because your brain waves change, because you're sitting with all the trauma that's stuck in your body. I'm like, how does anybody like this? I don't understand. But they just gifted me this $2,500 course. So I'm like, okay, I have to do this. Like, otherwise I probably wouldn't have kept doing it.
Yeah. Obligation is a great way
obligation,
to
like I was forced into this. So I go to the retreat, not knowing what to expect. The first meditation, I tapped so deep into the quantum because the energy is so intense. Imagine 1,600 people, and a lot of them are advanced meditators meditating at the same time. I'm like seeing these spirits. I'm like, what is going on? And I'm thinking I'm crazy, because like at this point I don't really know a lot about this work, and Dr. Joe doesn't talk about this in like, he doesn't really talk about seeing beings or spirits like until you go to the event. And and I'm also meeting like all these people who are like, yeah, I've healed myself of cancer, yeah, I've like healed myself of Lyme's disease. And I'm thinking, these are all actors, they're all crazy, and I'm crazy because I'm seeing these weird things in my meditation. Like, what is going on? And so I do probably the hardest week of my life. And one day we did an 8.5-hour meditation, and I'm getting all these like synchronicities. Like, I got an audition. I was an actor at the time. I got an audition for Supernatural, and his book is called Becoming Supernatural. And I was like, it was after meditation. I'm like, check your phone. And I did. And I knew I had an audition, like it just intuitively, and it was from Supernatural. And then I was like meeting all the right people. And that's when I actually, again, started praying. And I didn't really trust at this point. Like, I didn't trust the power of the divine, but so much was shifting. And I went back, and everything changed. Like my whole life shattered. I got let go of a job, even though like I was one of their, like my manager told me I was one of their best employees. This was right before COVID. And he was like, oh, we're letting go of all like
misalignment.
Pardon?
Just complete vibration. Yeah.
Everything. And I was like, and then my agent like dropped me. Well, he didn't actually right away, but it was like a few months after doing this work because I did it every single day. And like people fell out of my life. And I was like, what is going on? But they were just not vibrational matches anymore. And then I ended up going to Greece and Cyprus, and I studied with a healer there, and I ran retreats with her, and she does a lot of somatic healing. And then my life kept shifting, and I just kept seeing more and more miracles. And then there were enough signs and synchronicities, and I started testing this. But finally, there was just too much that I couldn't deny in my own life that shifted. And then now I know the power of this work. But I still keep getting tested on how powerful like we really are. And I am mind blown by how much I've manifested, good and bad, actually. Because your energetic field really, like, if you're downward spiraling, then you're going to draw that into your life. So your energy body and like the power of your mind is so important, which is why like when that happens, I just literally tune in to source and I put my hand on my heart and I ask for help and guidance. And I have not been led astray.
I love that. And so in amongst that practice, thank you for sharing, how do you conceptualize like divine will versus personal will? God's will for us, and like, you know, our ability to manifest, but then ultimately, like, do you believe that there's an authority over our life?
I think it's a co-creation. And I've learned some of this through trial and error, and some of this through like where to step into the light through Reiki. So I do Reiki. I'm like a teacher trainer in that as well. And I work with clients, but Reiki only works in the highest good ever, like ever. So it's very safe in that realm. Whereas manifestation, I've wanted certain things. Like I've been like, oh, I want to manifest a trip to Tofino, which is an island like off of Vancouver, because I just wanted to be away from the city. I manifested 2, and they weren't necessarily in my highest good because of the people around me and like how it happened. So there was a point where I got really frustrated. I'm like, I'm getting so good at manifesting, but like, why a lot of the time are these manifestations like not what I thought they would be? And that was the energy around it. And that was me manifesting almost from like ego or fear, or just like kind of running away from myself and my soul. And so now, can you repeat the question? When do we know?
How do you conceptualize like God's will for us versus our personal will? And how do you navigate that? If you believe that there's sometimes a difference between those two things?
So that's, I think since I left home a couple months ago, that's been a big part of my journey, learning and trusting the guidance of source through signs and my body feeling. And just because I used to like focus on what I wanted and feel that energy and change my energy to be an energetic match to that. But that was all like, what does Jill want? And now I'm seeing, no, none of this is about me. Like none of this is about me. I know for the most part, like why I'm here on this planet during this time. And it's not an easy thing. Like I know my powers are in healing and helping other people like understand this and like step into their own power and their own sovereignty and realize the power that they have aside from the constructs of society, of their family. That being said, I don't exactly know how that's going to look. So for the longest time, I tried to like project how I thought that was going to look and like, what did I want? But now I'm realizing the more I surrender and the more I trust, the more I'm guided. Like I'm in Costa Rica right now, literally because I prayed and I asked for guidance of where to go after Florida. And I had like 2 days to choose. And my friend out of the blue messaged me that she had a dream and woke up a couple days earlier and had to tell me I needed to go to Costa Rica, like literally out of the blue. She didn't know I was trying to figure out where to go. And then she finally called me and was like, okay, I woke up now 2 days in a row and I have to tell you this, and I didn't want to call you and tell you because it's kind of weird, but you need to go to Costa Rica. And I was like, thank you, because I almost booked a flight back to Canada. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel expansive. It felt like me going hiding and being in safety. And I had a few other places I could have gone, but my soul was calling me here. And now I see why. I really needed to come and connect to the land. And I've met so many synchronistic people like that had messages for me. So I guess like it's just trusting the signs of the universe and trusting your body, because if it doesn't feel good in your heart and your body, then and if it doesn't feel expansive, then it's probably not the path that source wants you to take. And also at its core, like, is that going to be of service to other people? Not just like of service to me and my ego and what I think I want, which is really at the core not usually what we want, because we're most fulfilled, I believe, as people when we're heart-centered and of service to others. And that's when we're most powerful, and that's when God really has our back. Yeah,
amen to that.
I hope that answers your question. Totally.
And yet, you know, listening to our bodies and our hearts, it takes discernment, you know. And I see so much of what so many people are going through right now, and just trying so hard to find a center of truth. Like, what is the truth? I feel so many people asking that question in their souls at the moment. And you know, I've had people actually reach out and ask me, like, how do you know when someone's in truth? How do you know what the truth is? Where do you find the truth? And I have my kind of answer to that, but I'd love to hear your reflections, because what I hear and what you're sharing is you've had to really learn how to discern what
100%
what your heart's really calling you towards and what is in the highest good.
And
why can't we discern? Actually, I'd love to explore that question from both sides, because I think we're born with that knowing. And so what happens to us from your perspective that takes us away from that discernment?
Absolutely. So for me, I try, and I used to struggle immensely with anxiety, and sometimes I still get it. If there's a lot of fear like in my outside world or around me, I'll absorb it. I try now never to make any decision or choice from fear. So I'll go out into nature, I'll meditate, like silent meditation. I do some guided ones too, but if I'm trying to figure out like where I'm being guided, I usually just sit in silence in nature. And once my body, my central nervous system calms down, I can tune in and the answer comes. And it either comes to me in the form of like something I'll see in my meditation or just a deep knowing. Sometimes I'll get up and not know the answer, but I'll feel so calm. And then I'll meet somebody on the street and they'll give me the answer in like the weirdest way, even though they didn't know I was looking for it. But I think the biggest thing is really just like taking the time to sit, release the fear, release the lower vibrations and all the chatter in the mind that we've been taught is truth growing up. And then trusting whatever comes when we're in that state of peace.
We got to go deeper into that though, because I feel like you've been at points in your life where if someone had said to you in the, you know, the grips of anxiety, just be calm, just be still.
Okay,
like I because it is so relevant for people right now. And so what do you need to cultivate? What do you like? What demons do you have to fight in your mind? How do you get through those barriers to actually find yourself in a state of willingness to go and sit in silence? Because it's like, there's a bunch of battles you've got to win when you're sitting in silence, but there's also a bunch of battles you've got to win before you even go to sit down. What are those resistances and how did you move past them? Because to get from the grips of anxiety to truly being able to make yourself available to is
Yeah.
that
Sorry, that's my little man. Hey, Coco, come here. Come here, little dude. Come here.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
sorry about
saying
that. Oh my
we
goodness,
love
I
you.
have to get him on camera. Come here, little man. He just sees another dog.
Yeah. Free spirit.
Yeah. So if it's like if I'm like in like panic mode, I'll try and do a lot of breath work. But the biggest, to transcend that energy and just release it, the biggest thing I think is trusting, because there's been moments where I'm like, when my dog got stolen and I prayed, like the cops were leaving, like we saw the whole thing on camera. And at this point, the cops were leaving, and they're like, I'm like, if I find out any information, can I contact anybody? And they said, nope, like we'll contact you if we find anything. So I'm like, well, okay. Hysterical at this point. Like I was not calm, but I'm like, hey, go back to what you know. What do you believe in? And it was just like the trust. I put my hand on my heart and I said, God, please let this woman feel the grief and the shame and guilt of what she's done. Remind her of karma. And if it is in his highest good, meaning my dog's highest good, for him to be with these people or somebody else, let it be so. And I let it go. And I wasn't calm in that moment, but that was all I had. I had nothing else. And literally 3 minutes later, she called the store and she was like, oh, we took this dog. We didn't know if it had a home. Like it was an interesting story. And I didn't believe what she said for a number of reasons. Also, the SPC was 4 minutes away and he was not there. But that just took trust in something greater than me, because I was at a loss. Like I literally couldn't do anything other than like tune into something more. And I just surrendered. I said, you know what, if this is meant to be, and if the highest good for his like betterment, like let it be so. And 3 minutes later she called, and like that wasn't me. Like there is no other explanation other than source. And I just had to put my trust in something, because at that moment there was nothing else I could have done. So I guess that is, I don't know if that answers your question, but the biggest thing is like putting the intention out there and trusting that you will get the guidance. And I think the reason because we're born knowing, we are born knowing. And I think as we go through society, with how it's structured in the school system, and then all these traumas that we literally carry in our body, which create sanskaras, which is the Sanskrit word basically for traumas. Sometimes it's the trauma and the fear running our mind, and our central nervous system like goes crazy. And then that's where we lack the clarity and the intuition and the pureness that we have when we're born and as a young child. And that sometimes, even for me, there's times where I'm like, okay, is this my trauma telling me this, or is this my body? And I've just gotten better at like figuring it out. And sometimes it's not clear. And then that's again when I pray and I ask for answers. And like when I put my full trust, I always get the answer. And it never comes in a way I thought it would. Like sometimes it's
I think that's really important, you know, being able to discern the differences between our fears and our intuition, because it can be very overwhelming, you know, when that fear kicks in. It feels like the dominant voice. It feels like the voice that is, you know, protecting you and guiding you, and it can really be difficult to discern, you know, what is intuition and what is fear.
100%. And you actually taught in the Create community the muscle testing. That helps me a lot as well. Yeah.
Just being able to bypass the part of our brain that is constantly trying to override you know our knowing. And it is like our bodies do know. And what I find so fascinating about the human body is it's an instrument for truth. Isn't that the most like profound understanding of our design, that like our DNA literally is divine, you know, it's in alignment to God and to truth by our very fabric. And
yes,
and yet, there's a very real part of our condition which is egocentric and and selfish, and can be tempted and can be coerced and can be corrupted. And all of these things that I think contribute to why we are disconnected then from the guidance that is truly there for us. And the reason I wanted to go so deeply into what are the true battles that we have to fight, because we have to fight them right now as a collective humanity. We have to fight these battles. Things won't change on the outside until we actually turn the mirror back and start asking ourselves, where have we gone off course?
100%. It's crazy. You just reminded me of how we literally create our reality as a collective, like so within as without. So like this reality that we have created right now is because of what our inner reality as a collective is. And I think it's so important for everybody to look inside and see where they're being held back by their fears, and where their heart really is, because I believe at everyone's core we are light and love, and everything else has been conditioning out of fear. And all these constructs that we think are truth and limiting beliefs. And so the more we can as a collective go within and tune into our hearts and tune into what we really want at our core, not oh, I want this thing, but why? Why do you want that thing? Oh, because of this. Okay, but why? And usually if the more I've done that, the more it's oh, because I think it'll bring joy. I think it'll bring happiness. I think it'll bring connection. And then if we can start with that, connection to ourselves, to the land, that's another thing I realized was so important when I'm discerning. When I was in Florida, just going in the sea and the ocean, if I didn't have the answer, it was so cleansing. I felt so connected and brought so much clarity. And there's all these little things that we can do to connect to source more. And a lot of that, I'm just looking out at the jungle, a lot of that is being taking your shoes off is a simple exercise, and stepping on the earth, on the ground, and being away from all the technology. And a lot of my answers and guidance has come when I'm doing that as well. I don't know if that answered your question. I feel like I just took it on.
Of course. I want everyone to adopt this and to spend more time doing that, because I think we can get so fixated on trying to determine, is that person telling the truth, or is this piece of information the truth, and we actually completely, I feel we miss the point that we've got to come home to ourselves. And when we truly, something I've been reflecting on in my own path lately, is we really have to find a state of peace within. Is your heart peaceful? And if your heart's not peaceful, your ability to discern is just not, it's not either. It's there's too much turmoil inside of you, which creates a distortion. And part of my practice this year has been, how do I need to live? What do I need to reconcile? I mean, the whole intention for this podcast, the reason it's called Unfinished, is because I want to inspire people to look at what's unfinished so that they can find true peace within their heart.
Absolutely.
And from that place, what we reap can truly flourish for good, and be sown for good, and not just more chaos, that's being projected out. So if I was to put that into a question to you, do you feel like you're at a point in your journey where you have a peaceful heart?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think it's a constant practice. And I think that's something some people like don't understand. Like there's so many daily practices that I do. Like I wake up, I'll meditate every morning. I'll have spirulina in the morning. I'll try not to look
Keys
at my
to a
phone.
peaceful heart. Spirulina.
Yeah, seriously, it
Brain
helps.
smoothies. Yeah.
Like what you put in your body, if you're putting all these acidic foods, like so much coffee, sugar, alcohol, I'm not saying these things are inherently bad. I'm just saying watch how much you're putting them, when you're putting them in. Is it with intention?
Amen.
Like I love wine and I love chocolate, and I need to be really, really conscious of when I have it.
Yeah.
Because if I'm just running away from it, it's like, okay, what am I hiding from? So I'd say the past 2 years, it's been like, and then I do self Reiki almost every day. It's been a long journey. And I'd say for the most part, yes. Although there are times when it's like, I don't know, like my central nervous system is going crazy and not regulated. I even had an experience yesterday. So I had to take half an hour and just like go and be by myself in the land and do self Reiki and move through that. And I think the more you practice these, the easier it is to regulate and to become heart-centered and really be at peace. And I also think the energies around you really matter. The people you bring into your circle. Like I'm really conscious because I need to be of service to my clients too. And eventually to like, I want to like be of service to as many people in the world. When I'm ready, I have to be conscious of the energies I'm bringing in. Am I bringing in chaos to my life, or am I bringing in other heart-centered people as peers that will help me? And what mentors am I bringing in so that I can be of service to these other people? So I think it's, for the most part, yes, although it is a constant practice. And when I don't do my daily practices, my world is chaos. So like those are very, very important to me. And breath work is very, very powerful for anyone listening who has a lot of anxiety. That has helped me a ton. But yeah, I think it's a constant practice. And I'm not going to say, oh, I'm always peace and heart center, because I'm not. And life throws me things sometimes where I just don't know what to do. And then I really have to use my tools even more and my resources. And yeah.
What do you think it means? Like, how do you define having a peaceful heart?
I think being at ease with life, in the flow of life, when I'm my most peaceful, things just come to me. Like if I have an issue and just don't really worry about it, set the intention, like the solution just comes, and it's usually in the form of another person. Like so many synchronicities. But yeah, and just being like in love with ourself and our being, and in love with others, and seeing other people's struggles, like seeing the pureness in that, instead of looking at them like, oh, something's wrong. Because when we do that, it's our shadow being like, oh, that's a part that I've actually hidden from myself. But then if we see their struggles as like, wow, they're going through this thing and I love them so much, and I see where I struggled with that, or where I still struggle with that, and like just being at this place of peace and calm, essentially within the storm. I don't really know how to describe it in words. It's more of an energy. Like it's an energy of just like being able to sit with myself and being the best person I can to myself and to other people. Because when I'm struggling with my own self-love, that's when other people are triggering me. But when I'm like more centered and like, you know what, I'm not perfect and no one is. And I love myself unconditionally, and I love other people unconditionally, because it starts with us.
100%.
So, yeah.
And so in the spirit of the podcast, what was the time in your life where you felt you had the most unfinished business? Maybe it was a time where something happened. Usually it manifests like this. Something happened that was just really left field, that you just did not see coming, and it left you feeling just like shattered. And at what point in your journey was that, and what did you have to muster, in internally to walk that path?
I feel like I'm going through that right now. I feel like when I left Vancouver, it was like my whole, like everything I knew, I kind of had to leave behind, and like my whole identity shattered. And it's through this whole COVID pandemic, I hope I can say that on here, that like I feel like
this is a safe space.
Okay, awesome. I've been uninvited to weddings, like family members' weddings. I'm not invited to Christmas, all of this stuff because of like what I don't want to put in my body. And it has not been easy, but it's really allowed me to step more into my path. And I know it's going to come full circle. As long as I stay in love, and I know I'm going to see my family again. Maybe right now they don't feel safe seeing me. But that's okay. Like I think all of that needed to happen for me to step more into my mission and more into my power. And I know that's to help people heal and to help people awaken. And right now is the time the world needs it most. And I think right now is why like all of that had to happen. Like when I got uninvited to Christmas, that was my worst nightmare growing up. Like literally, I've never not been with my family for Christmas. And I cried for like a day straight. And then I just let it go. And I was like, no, this is an opportunity for me and my expansion and my growth and my opportunity to help the world transcend. Because if I go back to who I was before, I was kind of hiding. And there's a part of me that still is like, I haven't fully stepped into my own power. And like every day I work on this, because there's no other time like in history that has needed healers more than now, and people to like really come from a place of unconditional love and teach people about the love of God. And like, yeah, sometimes we look through that in other realms. Like we look for that in a partner or like a dog, or an object or money, and this probably goes back to your question of like, how do I know when I am like at peace? And it's like a feeling, like I feel this protective energy that is around me. And it's within us and around us all the time. And that's literally the energy of God, of source. And we are a part of that. So I hope that answered your question, but I think I'm kind of going through that right now. Like that's been a big part of these 2 months. And I know it's just, I'm going to keep stepping more into my power and my purpose and be able to help more and more people as I evolve myself on this journey.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, I think that's the key, right? When things happen in our life and we feel literally we're at rock bottom, or we just didn't see it coming and we are disoriented, that can be one of like the hardest things for a human to experience, especially in society today, which it doesn't. When do you learn how to deal with life and with yourself when you don't know who you are anymore?
100%.
That is so trying. And I think like because of what's happened over the past couple of years in the world, so many people have lost their identities. And a big part of my background in facilitation was rite of passage and initiation. And I was stressed out because I had these questions of like, why do humans exist? What is ultimately always working for us, which is change. And so many have like traumas around their first experiences of change. And what tends to happen is things become unfinished. We don't seal that sort of metamorphosis in a way that's constructive and empowering, which is ultimately what these initiations should be, including the one that we're in right now with humanity. This could be, and I actually think will be, it is inevitable that it will be the most like magnificent initiation into a reality and a world that is beyond any of our imaginations right now. But this piece of understanding, like you did with your dog, of what is unfinished, and allow for that space for renewal to actually really come. It takes so much faith, and I actually think like we can't get through it without faith and trust and a belief ultimately in something bigger than us.
100%. And like you said, letting go of our identity, or what we think our identity was. Like for me, that like I was an actor, and I thought that's what I wanted to do, that because I wanted to touch, move, and inspire people. And like I literally thought that's who I was. And it was weird because it was actually the easiest thing to let go. But right before it, I had a huge shift, and it was like the shattering of my ego and my paradigm. And I'm like, who am I? Like, I don't know. And then I was like, now I realize I am part of source. We're all like, we truly are all connected. We are all one. We are all love at our core. And the sooner we can all like learn to tap into that frequency more and more often, the sooner that new earth will birth. I think it will for sure, but it's not easy, like, to let go of who we think we are. Yeah.
Optimal, perspective there, who we think we are. It's how we see ourselves really is not, I believe, what we're here to be, or so rarely that image of self. It's like the example I often give is what you love about the people that you're in love with is so not the things that they think you love them for. Like ever, like we think that the parts of ourselves that we feel like the least kind of embarrassed about or ashamed about, we think that they're the things people love us for. Like it would be easy for me to think the people that love me because I'm a great speaker, or I can build businesses or whatever. But that's never the reason that the people that really love me. They love me when I'm being a dork. They love me when I feel the least lovable a lot of the time. And I sort of think that like this is the reorientation of our own perspective that we need to really like lean into to see ourselves through God's eyes, and to let go of the ego, because we don't want to let go, because we ultimately don't want those parts of ourselves that we see as fragile and unlovable to be seen. We want to stay hiding behind that identity that is like that we deem powerful and enough and okay and acceptable. That's what fundamentally we resist, I think, in those moments.
100%. And even if you go into like a typical conversation, or at least that I had growing up, it's like, oh, what does this person do? As if they were almost defined by that. But like everyone in my life, like I don't love them because of what they do. I love them because of who they are.
That's right.
And it's like, sometimes we're blinded to that. Like you just said.
Yeah. And yet it's in that space, actually a perspective that was given to me yesterday. I was sharing it with Kate from my team just earlier today, because it touched me so much, was the idea that the gifts that God has given us, they can never be taken away or minimized. They're always there, and fundamentally that's not why we're loved by God. That's not what we're judged against, so to speak. What we're judged against is our character, what we choose to do with those gifts, who we choose to become in the face of those gifts, and how much responsibility we practice through the strength of our character. And I thought that was so beautiful, because we could be the most bitter, twisted, arrogant, angry at God,
Yeah.
disrespected, and God loves us so much that we still have our gifts. We don't have to use them for that greater good.
Mm-hmm.
But when we do, which takes that will and that trust that we will be guided, that we expose ourselves and be vulnerable and actually be seen for the entirety of who we are by the world. That's actually what builds and strengthens our character to a place that we really can serve a greater good in our lifetime.
100%.
Mm.
Yeah. And he loves us so much unconditionally. Unconditionally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the best when you figure it out. When you get out of your own way and you
Yes.
I know. Yeah, the idea that we're not enough for that love, it's just us judging ourselves in that idea, us punishing ourselves in that idea, in the mirror of that idea. Yeah. So there's a couple of questions that I think are really pretty potent and relevant to this conversation that I'd love us to dive into. So one of them was related to what we were speaking about before, but to backtrack, when you're triggered by a person in a moment that's, I'm assuming she means when you get taken away from that personal peace, what do you do? So in the moment you get triggered, this is a podcast of truth, by the way. So if the truth is you lose your shit and then 2 days later you reflect on yourself, let's just real talk and then deconstruct that. And then if we need to come up with better strategies to support our listeners, we can do that after the fact.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, it depends who it is. To be completely honest, if they're super close to me, full truth, sometimes I get really triggered in that moment, I just snap. But if they're so this is very close family, or really, really close friends or a partner, I'll just sometimes I will just snap, and then I'll step back and be like, you know what, I can't deal with this right now. Let's have this conversation later. And then I'll go. A lot of people, I don't want to say a lot of people, some of my friends come to me when they're very, very triggered to talk things out. I like to do a lot of that work by myself, not away from anybody. Because in that state, I'm okay, I need to be by myself. But if they're not as close to me, so if they're a good friend or an acquaintance or a stranger, usually I'll get less triggered firstly, but I'll step back, I'll take a breath, tune into my body and respond from there. And whether that's let's have this conversation later, I don't want to have this conversation, I'll try and be a lot more cordial about it, and boundaried in I need to deal with my own stuff so I don't snap. But yeah, sometimes with my family, I'll react right away, and then I'll realize it. And then I'll step back and say we need to work this out when I'm not in fight and flight, because I'm triggered and I need to go cry or go hit a pillow or go for a run, and then we can talk about it. But right now is not the right time. So yeah, that's my very truthful answer. I do snap sometimes if people are closer to me.
Hey, the main sentiment there, I think, is the humility, right? To be yo, actually, I'm not calm right now. Let's revisit this conversation. Just that, if more people could do just that, I think the world is a very different place. And one thing for perspective that I like to do is reverse that perspective and ask to not find the humility to lean into that conversation. What are you losing as a result of that? What's it costing you? For me, it just, if I'm feeling stubborn or prideful, that because I've been in situations in my life that have dragged on for months, years, where that moment of stubbornness resulted in grudges and resentment that just like is so toxic for us. Versus like just swallowing our pride and being like, actually, I overreacted. Give me some time and let's come back to love.
Yeah, I think you lose like everything that we really care about if you don't have the humility to talk about it. You lose complete connection with that other person, an opportunity, a growth opportunity, and connection with our true self, I think, as well. And then we harbor resentment in our bodies, which can turn into disease, and then we get triggered even more. And I actually have an example of this the other day. So my roommate and really, really good friend, we're staying here together in Costa Rica at the moment, and we're staying in a tiny space, and she's such a gem. And the other day she needed to talk to me about something, and she was holding it in, and then she finally just said it, and we both like cried and laughed, and like then it was so workable after. But it's like we can sense when somebody's holding back, and that brought us so much closer as friends. And it's like we love each other as sisters unconditionally. And sometimes the conversations are hard and very uncomfortable. But if we don't have them, then it's like this distance and like tension that you can feel with that other person. And I think I carried a lot of this with my family for so many years. Like I wouldn't have a lot of conversations with them from a heartfelt place. And I didn't even realize it until I realized I was scared when they came home into the house. The first time I realized that was in the Landmark Forum many, many years ago. And then, yeah, and now like I said, sometimes it's usually over text when I snap, to be honest. But to my family, I did it to my mom the other day, and I just said, I can't talk about this right now. She kept pushing, and then I snapped, and then I said, let's talk about this in a couple of days. And now like it's fine. We have different views on things, but it would really rob ourselves of that opportunity to have that connection, regardless of a view on what's going on in the world, or a view on an issue, or a view on like whatever it is. So yeah, I think if we don't, then it just robs ourselves of that true connection, and it creates animosity, whether we realize it or not, in our bodies. Like we're holding it and people can feel it.
Yes, that's so valuable. This is the cost. This is the cost of when we don't choose that vulnerability and that humility. And I always ask, because I've gone through massive periods of my life where I was terrified to have those hard conversations, and that was judged in all these different ways. It was judged as like slyness or secrecy, and like my truth was none of those things. I was so scared to be vulnerable. I was so scared to be seen, and it wasn't an aggressive behavior, it was a defensive behavior. And I think that distinction, so that we can hold each other in compassion, is really important. That if you have someone in your life that like you feel these things with, that tension, tension is high right now in relationships. I think a lot of people, especially this community, experiencing that. How can you soften? How can you relinquish the need to be right, the need to be even understood? Just like letting go of that, and being willing to meet someone, just no matter what they say, to favor love, and to favor the relationship over being right and wrong.
Exactly. 100%.
Which I think is a good segue to the next question, which is, the question actually implies you've already reached this place, so you can let us know if that's the truth.
Okay.
What did you do to get yourself to a place of loving yourself unconditionally?
Oh yeah. A lot of work. I used to punish myself in so many ways. I didn't even realize it. So I've done a lot of healing around this. I do daily practices. I do self Reiki every single day. And there's specific symbols I use an empowerment one every day, and I use like self-love. And whenever I find myself talking negatively about myself, I'll stop and say, oh, I just was saying this awful thing about myself. I love myself so much that I just realized I was saying this thing. And I love myself so much, but that's not true. And I just kind of try and tune in to like this higher energy of love. And then I realize how much I am loved by the divine, and I bring that into my body. I do this through meditations as well. Dr. Joe's Blessing of the Energy Centers one has helped me a lot. And I've done a lot of, I've worked with healers like Reiki healers, quantum healers. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I think it never ends. Like, I do think I really, really love myself, and there's still more work to do.
Always.
Every day.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what does it even mean to love yourself unconditionally? You know, it's I think for so many of us, that is still a concept that we haven't even necessarily defined. Like, what is life like when you've reached that place, this pure unconditional love for self?
I think you start to honor your body more. You start to honor your needs. You start to honor your boundaries. You start to not really care what other people think. You start to make choices more in alignment with your health and your well-being and what lights you up. And you fill your cup more so that you can fill other people's cups. And like I said, it's not, I don't think it's a one day you're punishing yourself so much, and then the next day you're just like in so much self-love. Like, it's a process and it's a journey. And like, there are days where I don't feel like I love myself, and I don't make the healthiest choices. But I consciously try. This is why I start my day every day with either self-Reiki or energy healing or meditation, because that brings me back to my truth and my soul. And when we are like, that's us in our purest, and it is nothing but love. But yeah, there's days that I definitely struggle with that.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's a really simple, but I think very powerful perspective is truly like, how are you treating yourself every day?
Yeah.
Are you really taking the time? Because there's like loads of times in my own journey where I'll be so like wrapped in work, and I haven't taken the time that day to like really be intentional with my food. Or maybe I've gone 100%. To gym, but the way that I trained it wasn't loving. It was like, I just have to get it done. I wasn't present. Like, I was doing it because it's like an attitude of, I think this is what I have to do, not actually.
Yeah.
And the whole point of training, the whole point of exercise is to give your body what it needs, to love it, you know, and to adopt that mindset is actually, it's the opposite of love.
100%. And I find when you're in doing it for the nourishment of the exercise, it's a whole different experience, and your body, like it gets invigorated by it, instead of like so tired. I don't know the word. Yes. Yeah. 100%.
That's a good litmus test, by the way, everybody, for I think most things in life. How do you actually feel after you do things, after you have a conversation with that person, or you finish your job? Do you feel vital? Do you feel expanded? Or do you constantly feel drained? And if you do constantly feel drained or depressed or whatever it is, that's an invitation to start loving yourself more, making, you know, at least maybe you're not ready to make different choices, but starting to open your mind to a different possibility.
Just realized another thing for self-love for me that was really hard at first was boundaries. Like, how am I letting other people treat me? What am I putting up with, and what am I not? And there's a period of my time put up with everything. And I was literally letting people like physically, emotionally, psychologically abuse me, even sexually. And I didn't even realize I was allowing that. Like I was the one allowing that to happen. And then the more I realized that and took responsibility for that and stepped into self-love, the more I was able to shift it.
Powerful message. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Final wisdom or words, maybe specifically for anyone that feels like they're in the thick of trying to resolve any unfinished business in their own life.
Trust in source and you won't be misguided, and start testing it, because it took a long time for me to even realize there was a greater power, and so many tests, because my mind was like, not true, not true, not true, not true, not true. And it was like, sign, synchronicity. And finally I started surrendering. But I mean, do a prayer at the beginning of your morning before you check your phone, and just tune in and say, show me a sign that you are truly there. And the first time I got a sign like this, like when I asked, it was crazy. It was my birthday. It's a long story, but it was like, oh my God, okay, there's no way this is a coincidence. And the more you trust, the more signs you'll get, and the more you'll work and flow with source. And I'm not saying there's not going to be battles, because absolutely there is. And I feel like the more you step into your true authentic self, sometimes the more complex or the harder the battles are, but then you're just up leveling, and you're up leveling your trust in yourself and in source and in the mission. And we're all in this together is another really important thing. Like, I know during these times, sometimes it feels like we're all alone. Like, we are all in this together as a humanity. And the more we can come together, regardless of what your views are on anything, but come together in love instead of dividing and separating, the easier this transition is going to be, and the sooner we're going to get through all of this, and the more pleasant it's going to be.
Yeah. Favor each other.
Yes.
So simple.
Yes.
We're not the ones, guys, that are meant to judge. You know, God can judge. we're here to love each other and do the best that we can, you know, in each moment, and just bring it back. These really basic principles. Are we really doing the best that we can moment to moment in our own life?
100%.
Love ourselves and each other more in that, and show those that you would otherwise judge the way, you know, take that responsibility. Love it. Thank you, Jill. How can these guys find you, support you? I'm also going to say to listeners, we totally love it when you send us and our guests you know, messages, direct messages, and what you got from this conversation, and especially practices, if you end up trying them, which of course we support you to do. Let Jill know the difference that had in your life. But yeah, how can these guys find you and support you?
Firstly, please let me know, because I love hearing the difference in people's lives. That's what like really invigorates me and keeps me going. Thank you so much, Nicole. This was amazing. And so Instagram, my name is @JillAlanaNixon. Facebook as well. I have a Healing Hands Facebook page, and my website is on my link tree on Instagram. And I also have my own podcast, which I just revamped after a year and a half. It's called Flying High on Consciousness. So I did my first episode of season 2 last week, and I will be doing more. So thank you so much. And yes, please reach out if you have any questions about this process. I'm on the journey too. I've been on it for a few years, and I love helping people on this journey. So
all of these guys are thinking. So
I'm sending you all my love. So much love. And one more thing, like, remember, all of you are the power. Like, we are literally part of source. Source lives in you. So we don't need to give our power away to like when I say pray and surrender, it's like the power is within us as well. It's guiding us. It's not like, oh, I'm giving it away to somebody else. Like we're working with it in co-creation. I think that's really important to remember. We are in co-creation with source.
The
And
kingdom.
you are all so powerful. Yes, sorry, I totally interrupted you.
Yeah. Amen, sister. Much love. Hey family, if you loved this podcast and you want to stay connected to a tribe of heroes all around the world that are here to make the world a better place and act from their hero brain and act from a place of love, bringing their head and heart into cohesion, then I just want to invite you to jump in our Facebook group for free. Just search the Critical Mass Crew and you're going to find us there. We have tribe calls weekly, and these podcasts actually streamed into that group. So we have an additional 20-minute Q&A with the guests every single week that is exclusive to people in the group. So you'll also find the link in the show notes. See you in there.